Policies for reporting health issues. Okay, as a manager, you must tell your staff and have them let you know when they are sick. You need to be prepared to show proof that you've done this, such as signed statements in which staff has agreed to report illnesses, documentation showing staff has completed training, which includes information on the importance of reporting illness, and maybe some posted signs or pocket cards to remind staff to notify managers when they are sick. Staff must report illnesses before they come into work, if they get sick while working, or if they live with somebody that's been diagnosed with one of these illnesses, such as neurovirus, hepatitis A, Shigella, Shiga toxin producing E. coli, Salmonella typhi, and non-typhoidal Salmonella. When food handlers are sick, you may need to restrict them from working with exposed food utensils or equipment, or exclude them from coming to the operation. This is especially important if they have these symptoms: vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, which is the yellowing of the skin or eyes, sore throat with fever, or an infected wound or boil that's open or draining, unless it can be covered. Okay, so restricting them is just not allowing them to work with food, utensils, or equipment. Excluding them is not even allowing them to come into work. Watching for staff illnesses. Okay, you should watch for these signs of illnesses: vomiting, excessive trips to the bathroom, yellowing the skin, eyes, or fingernails, which is called jaundice, cold sweats or chills, which may indicate that they have a fever, or persistent nasal discharge or sneezing. Here are some circumstances of when you need to restrict versus exclude. Okay, if the food handler has an infected wound or boil that is not properly covered, you need to restrict them from working with food, utensils, or equipment. If the food handler has a sore throat with a fever, you need to restrict the food handler from working with exposed food, utensils, or equipment. But if the food handler is working with a high-risk population, they must be excluded. Okay, high-risk population is more susceptible to getting a foodborne illness, so you must include the food handler if they are working with a high-risk population. If they're working with a high-risk population and excluded from the restaurant, a written release for a medical practitioner is required before returning to work. If a food handler has persistent sneezing or coughing or a runny nose with discharge from the eyes, nose, or mouth, you have to restrict the food handler from working with exposed food, utensils, and equipment. If the food handler has at least one of these symptoms or infections or conditions, vomiting, diarrhea, or jaundice, you must exclude them from the operation. Okay, if they're vomiting and have diarrhea, before returning to work, food handler must either have no symptoms for at least 24 hours or a written release from a medical practitioner. If they have jaundice, report the food handler to the regulatory authorities. Exclude the food handler who has jaundice for 7 days or less. Before returning to work, the food handler must have both a written release from a medical practitioner and approval from regulatory authority. Another circumstance: if the food handler is vomiting or has diarrhea and has been diagnosed with an illness caused by one of these pathogens, neurovirus, Shigella, non-typhoidal Salmonella, Shigella toxin, Shiga toxin causing E. coli, or if the food handler has been diagnosed with an illness caused by one of these pathogens, hepatitis A or Salmonella typhi, you must exclude the food handler from the operation, report the situation to the regulatory authorities, and work with the medical practitioner and local regulatory authorities.